Rachel Senes with City TV, and welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. Today we are coming to you from East Cabrillo Boulevard, the 4-lane roadway that extends from Stearns Wharf to the 101. It's an area that has been important for much of Santa Barbara's storied past, and we'll tell you more about its history later on in the show. But first, our top story. If you live or work near the airport, you may have noticed that there has been a lot more air traffic than usual. Up next, we explain why it's not due to a flood of passengers, but rather an attempt to prevent a flood of a different kind. This summer, the Gap Fire burned over 9,000 acres in the front country of the San Ynez Mountains, north of Goleta. And as we've learned from the past, the aftermath of a fire can be just as devastating as a fire itself.
In 1990, when we had the paint fire up on the East Camino, Cielo, basically there was a major flood event and something like 6 feet of water and mud came down over by the Hope Ranch area.
The Burned Area Emergency Response Team, also known as BEAR, determined that 76% of the burned area of the Gap Fire was severely burned. Because the Gap Fire removed almost all the vegetative cover over the majority of the burned area, especially on the steep slopes, there is a good chance for increased water runoff, leading to flooding and debris flow. Although the Gap Fire has long been over, the work to stabilize the burned and denuded areas from the winter rains has only just begun. Look out to the mountains and you'll see they're noticeably greener. But it's not a case of revegetation, it's a substance called hydromulch. You may have noticed aircraft dropping this green stuff, just like fire retardant during a fire.
The hydromulch will keep more of the soil on the mountain when those rains come, and we hope it will prevent flooding and mudslides that might damage valuable property here in the Goleta area.
Hydromulch is an organic substance that's made out of wood mulch, recycled papers, water, and guar gum, which is an ingredient that holds all the other ingredients together. It doesn't smell at all, it's non-toxic, and it's proven to be very effective in preventing erosion. Hydromulch is green because of the dye that is mixed in. This way, pilots can monitor its application. After a few days on the ground, the hydromulch will fade to a brownish gray. The hydromulch doesn't contain any seeds. Vegetation will re-sprout faster and hold the soil in place better when it doesn't compete with new seeds. Hydromulch was applied from the air to about 1,531 acres in the Gap Fire's high-severity burn area. The aerial hydromulching process started here at the Santa Barbara Airport, 7 days a week from sunrise to sunset. 6 fixed-wing aircraft were pumped with 800 gallons of hydromulch each, enough to treat about 1/3 of an acre.
What you've got on the infield here is their batch plant, where they've got their hydromulch mix. They've tapped in, they've got water, they mix it up, they've got the hoses that come out, the planes come in, they'll load the plane with the hydromulch mix while they're cleaning a window, while they're checking the nozzles, while they're making sure the oils, all of this is going on at once, and then they'll release them and they go. It's like a NASCAR pit stop in every sense of the word. This was a Forest Service base for many, many years, and we've had lots of firefighting operations, but they've not had this type of preventative hydromulch operation in the past.
In addition to the 6 fixed-wing aircraft launching out of the Santa Barbara Airport, this Sky Crane helicopter is also being used during the hydromulching process. Now, it is being launched out of this temporary helibase at San Fernando Rey near Paradise Road. The helicopter can carry about 2,000 gallons of hydromulch, which can cover up to 1 acre.
Well, the Forest Service, when they set these jobs up, they go out and they GPS grid what they call a polygon or a shapefile, and they enter that into what we call a SAT-lock system. And then when we come out and we fly it, we fly inside of those grid lines. With the helicopter, we a lot of times get the rougher ground and the deeper canyons and stuff, and we'll use more contour lines to fill in and get better coverage in the areas that need it.
There are areas that will not be treated during aerial hydromulching, like slopes up to 60% in the burned areas, because there are no effective treatments for slopes that steep. The intense aerial hydromulching process means these pilots are flying a combined 250 flights per day out of the airport.
So basically, for up to a month, residents can expect a lot more air activity than usual, noise. You've heard the craft. I mean, they're not as noisy actually as a turboprop, but they're noisy. And so there's going to be more noise, there's going to be more activity on the mountain.
Noise that may be a little inconvenient for nearby residents and businesses, but worth it in the long run. Over a 13-day period, the 6 planes and 1 helicopter made 3,238 flights, delivering 3.5 million gallons of hydromulch on Forest Service land. Now the process has shifted to the lower part of the mountain range, which is county and private land. Well, about 100 years ago, before the breakwater was built and sand accumulated here, the ocean was much closer to Cabrillo Boulevard. Large storms frequently caused serious damage to the road. Well, if you've taken a stroll along this portion of our beautiful waterfront lately, you've probably noticed something different. Up next, we'll show you the results of the East Cabrillo Boulevard sidewalk improvements.
Over the years, Cabrillo Boulevard has undergone a number of dramatic changes. It has evolved from small dirt road to important city artery, from seldom traveled beach path to major tourist attraction. But recently, the sidewalk that runs along the boulevard had begun to look as if its better days had long since passed.
It was about 80 years old, and it had been patched with asphalt for decades. And in fact, there probably had not been any planting in the planters for at least a couple or 3 decades, from what we can tell from photographic records.
The city decided to replace nearly a mile of the sidewalk between Anacapa and Milpa Streets, but during the planning process, they discovered something that extended their timeline.
We found that this is a historic district designated by the state, and it extends from State Street all the way back to Highway 101. The reason for that was the design of this promenade-style sidewalk came from the Olmsted brothers and Charles Cheney, and it was designed in the early 20s, and they were pretty well known and pretty well respected at that time, and they were going up and down the California coast, assisting a lot of cities with their beachfront designs.
As a nod to its historic past, the new sidewalk was designed to mirror the unique look of its predecessor.
We had a great contractor, a local contractor, Lash Construction, and they did a great job putting in the sidewalk and doing all of the scoring patterns by hand as it was done originally.
And as for those barren planters?
We actually planted them with plants, so that's definitely one improvement over how things used to be. Also, just having a nice smooth sidewalk, you see there are a lot more folks enjoying it today than you probably have in the past.
The planters were also reconfigured to provide better access.
Whereas in the past we had longer planting areas, while they didn't have plants, we've reduced the size of those and pulled them away from the curb, so that way when folks park, they can get out of their cars easier. And while there's plants where there weren't before, I think they benefit from just the visual element.
Decorative ironwork, new cans for trash and recycling, and markers for the arts and crafts show were also added as part of the project.
You can see more whose artist, whose space is there, you know. Also the people who buy artwork here, they can look the numbers and they can come back and they don't miss us. It really looks great.
When we've been out here, I've heard people, and I'm quoting people who said that this was one, if not the best project the city's done in a long time. And it impacts so many people. It's a mile long. It's right here at our beachfront. There's a lot of exposure for this project.
The temporary fencing placed to protect the new plantings will be removed this March. Well, the wall and road work that created this area in the 1930s were more than just beautification projects. They were employment projects as well. The Parks Department utilized hundreds of workers who would have otherwise been unemployed due to the Depression. Well, November 4th is fast approaching, and that means you'll have a number of important choices to make. Coming up, we'll tell you about a local measure on this November's ballot. It's called Measure G. Water, natural gas, trash, electricity, telephone, and cable TV. Currently, all Santa Barbara residents pay a 6% tax on these utilities. It's called the Utility Users Tax, or UUT. The revenue from this tax is used to pay for essential city services. If we look at just the telephone and cable TV portion of the UUT, the revenue in 2008 totaled about $5.4 million. 50% of this revenue goes to the city's general fund.
The general fund is what most taxpayers and citizens would think of when they think of local government. It covers public safety, police and fire. It covers parks and recreation, libraries, some of the administrative departments, community development. Basically, it covers those governmental services which are tax supported.
The other half of the revenue goes to the Streets Fund, which includes the maintenance and repair of city streets and roads. This November, Measure G will ask voters to reauthorize and update the city's utility users tax only on telephone and cable TV. This means two things. First, Measure G means a reduction. Measure G will reduce the tax rate from 6% to 5.75% on the city's existing utility users tax on telephone and cable TV. Second, Measure G will modernize the UUT to be consistent with new federal and state laws and update definitions so all taxpayers are treated the same. Santa Barbara's current UUT does not reflect the latest communications technology. This has resulted in some people being taxed for communication services while others are not.
The modernization refers to the fact that our utility tax ordinance has been in place since the 1970s, and as everyone knows, technology has changed pretty dramatically since that time, and by modernizing it, we will be picking up certain technologies for telephone and cable TV that we currently don't cover.
So what will be taxed and what won't be taxed under the new Measure G? Let's start with cell phone usage. If you have a data plan on your BlackBerry or smartphone, this will not be affected. It is not taxed now and will not be taxed if Measure G passes. In other words, the ability to get on the internet and send or receive emails via your cell phone will not be taxed.
The only thing that would change on your cell phone bill in terms of taxation should Measure G pass would be that anything you pay for a text message package, which currently is not taxable, would be taxable.
If you have a data plan on your BlackBerry or smartphone, this will not be affected. It is not taxed now and will not be taxed if Measure G passes. In other words, the ability to get on the internet and send or receive emails via your cell phone will not be taxed. International calls are currently not taxed. Under Measure G, the UUT will be expanded to international calls. What about the ability to hop on a computer and access the internet? Logging on to the internet is not taxed now and will not be taxed under Measure G. For example, if you get high-speed or dial-up internet access through a company like Verizon, AOL, or Cox Communications.
There's a federal law in place that doesn't expire until 2014, which prohibits all local taxes for internet access. Measure G makes it clear in the ordinance that internet access will not be taxed, so that even if at some future time federal law changes and allows local governments to tax internet access, our utility tax would not apply to internet access, whether it be at your home or on your cell phone.
If Measure G passes, it will also affect internet-based telephone services, which places your telephone calls over a broadband internet connection instead of a regular phone line. So, if you have cable TV, telephone, or cell phone service, passage of Measure G will reduce the tax rate on those services from 6% to 5.75%. On the other hand, Measure G will expand the tax to cover newer telecommunication and video technologies. It is estimated that lowering the UUT rate and expanding the UUT to newer telecommunication and video technologies will maintain the current level of $5.4 million in revenue for city services. More than 150 cities in California have a utility users tax. Over the past couple of years, at least 26 cities have successfully modernized their telephone and cable television utility users tax by voter approval. Measure G requires a majority vote to pass. For more information, go to our website, santabarbaraca.gov, and click on the quick link called Measure G. Well, on September 16th, City Council approved changes to the Access Advisory Committee, which is now ready to take the Americans with Disability Act compliance in Santa Barbara to the next level. City TV's Dominique Blocker has the story.
For many people, having an access ramp at your street corner or closed captioning for your favorite TV show makes little difference. But for those with disabilities, these features are the difference between living an active, informed life or not. To create a community of opportunities rather than obstacles, the City of Santa Barbara has made compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, a priority since its creation.
The ADA was passed in 1990, and even before then, the city had been doing a lot of the same things that are contained in the ADA under a law called the Rehabilitation Act. But the ADA really expanded the city's efforts in providing accessible programs, services, and activities.
In order to expand the ADA's effectiveness and accessibility throughout Santa Barbara, city staff recently made recommendations to the City Council for changes to the Access Advisory Committee.
This will take the Access Advisory Committee and expand its scope beyond just building issues and into our policies and programs and procedures, and helping us to ensure that we continue to make changes as necessary to make our city more accessible in policy ways, and then also to help us identify these opportunities in the community to increase just community-wide accessibility.
They found 3 areas that could be improved upon by a reorganization. The committee can help the city prioritize accessibility projects based on the needs of the disabled community. They can increase the accessibility of city programs, and they can also serve as a resource to people throughout the community.
One of the exciting things that we'll be doing with our new Access Advisory Committee is identifying some of those opportunities to help our local businesses to understand and really realize how easy it is to comply with the ADA and to make some significant access changes that will enhance the lives of people with disabilities in our community.
And in order to make it as easy as possible for local businesses, the city has set up a website and is also working on other creative ways to encourage accessibility throughout Santa Barbara.
A good example would be if a employee in a restaurant denied a service animal entry into the restaurant because they thought it violated the health codes. We'd be able to call the owner of the restaurant, give him a pamphlet that explains the right of service animals, and then the owner could discuss that with the employees. It's a win for the owner because they're not violating the ADA, and it's a win for the people in our community with disabilities.
Find the button. Where's the button?
One of those people is Adelaida Ortega, a Santa Barbara resident who is not only on the Access Advisory Committee, but also part of the disabled community. For Ortega, working with the city to increase accessibility is about helping others understand what life is like being disabled.
I think it's so important to educate people about being handicapped or having a disability, because since I lost my eyesight, I've become so aware of things that need to be brought to the attention of the city.
The committee will have, 51% of its members will be people with disabilities, so that'll help us as well. The perspectives and experiences of people with disabilities are really important when you're trying to address these types of issues.
Construction projects throughout city buildings all meet ADA requirements, and by listening to the public, they are addressing highly trafficked areas that did not meet accessibility standards.
The main library construction project is an excellent example of that, where it came to our attention that people who were using the main library were not able to access convenient, accessible restrooms. Once we realized that we had that problem, it was a real short turnaround in finding the funds to fund that project and to get it started.
I really see the library as the heart of the community. It's where your public has the most contact with local government, I think. Around 2,500 people a day come to this building, not just for the library, but also for the Faulkner Gallery and all the meetings and the art shows and the concerts that we put on here. So it's very, very important that everybody who comes here is able to use the facilities, with equal access.
Any one of us could become disabled tomorrow. And more of our population as they age are going to have accessibility-related issues. Accessibility is a matter of civil rights. It's a matter of allowing every member of our community, regardless of how disabled they are, to participate in our community and to be able to enjoy the benefits of living in this beautiful place.
For more information on ADA resources, or if you're interested in being on the Access Advisory Committee, visit santabarbaraca.gov and click on the Accessibility link in the upper right-hand corner. So you think you can't dance, but you'd like to try? Well, the Recreation Division just held a free open house that featured many classes to make you lighter on your feet, or at least on your partners. Band 2 brings us the story from the Carrillo Recreation Center.
It's becoming a new Santa Barbara tradition. People of all ages coming to try a new dance or exercise in a recreational smorgasbord. We're talking about the Carrillo Recreation Center Open House, and it's just the thing to get you off the couch and into action.
It's all about introducing people to something that they may not have tried before, and just giving them a little bit of experience, so if they are just on the cusp of signing up and they just want to try it.
The 6th annual open house attracted over 1,000 people who came to try a new activity for free during this week-long event.
It's good to see because I think it's a healthy activity. You're going to meet new people, you're going to socialize, and you're going to get a light workout at the same time. Most of what we do is in the dance world, so ballroom dance, salsa, tango, belly dance. Those are the types of classes that attract the most people. We also have some exercise programs.
Among the exercise programs were yoga and jazzer step.
People will come to yoga when they're looking for ways to relax or reduce the stress in their lives.
If you dislike most kinds of exercise because you find it painful, grueling, boring, jazzercise is always fun.
I decided to give jazzer step a try, and it is really fun. But don't think you're out of luck if you miss the open house, because it's never too late to stop by the Carrillo Recreation Center and check out what they have to offer.
A couple programs are differently priced, but most of them you can drop into a single class for $12 for city residents or $14 for non-residents, or you can take a session, $67 for city residents or $74 for non-city residents for a series of 6 classes.
For some, running on a treadmill will do. For others, the Carrillo Recreation Center is a community jewel to dance, exercise, learn, and build friendships.
You take people with 2 left feet, 2 right feet, no balance, some balance, it makes no difference.
For most of us, this is how we decompress at the end of the day. We come hang out with each other, we dance, get exercise, sweat, and have a good time.
It's really great that we have a community with these kind of resources, and it's really great. Look at all the smiling faces coming in.
For a schedule of classes at the Carrillo Recreation Center, go to our website, citytv18.com. Well, the area between East Cabrillo Boulevard and the beach is a great place to ride your bike and take a walk. Across the way is Chase Palm Park, where you can enjoy live music during the summer. And if you're tired of today's pop music, maybe it's time to refresh your ears with the historic sounds of the Wonder Morton organ. Christy Zwicky brings us the story from the Arlington Theater.
Most of us have enjoyed a movie or performance at Santa Barbara's historic Arlington Theater, but one of its hidden treasures was celebrated this October. Out of the stage floor rose an instrument capable of producing a rich, multi-layered sound that has the ability to whisk you back to the days of silent films and bowler hats. And it's no coincidence that it's called a Wonder Morton organ.
There are synthesizers today that can emulate a lot of the theater pipe organ sounds, but you're not sitting in a theater surrounded by pipe chambers having the sound come to you from all different avenues, and you feel it.
This Wonder Morton is a rare piece of history, one of only 5 large theater pipe organs manufactured by the Robert Morton Company of Van Nuys, California. It was originally installed in 1928 at the Lowe's Theater in Jersey City.
Lowe's decided to quadruplex the theater in the 70s. The organ was removed, 20 tons. It's got 7,000 moving parts. It was trucked to Dallas, Texas. The owner of that warehouse died. The family said, either get this out of here or we're going to take it to the dump. We found out about that. We got it donated to the city of Santa Barbara on the condition that it'd be up and playing in 2 years, which is a tall order because it only takes 8 to 10 years to build an instrument like this. We put in over 36,000 volunteer hours, and our opening concert was 20 years ago.
This organ is not the same as the one in your grandma's basement. Embellished in 24-karat gold, it has 2,000 ranks or pipes, each producing a different orchestral sound. It takes a special talent to play keys that can produce sounds from a tuba to a glockenspiel to horse hooves. For this special concert, the audience was blown away by acclaimed organist Scott Fopiano, who was named Organist of the Year at the 2007 National Convention of the American Theater Organ Society.
In the 8th grade, my parents took me to the Orpheum Theater in Memphis to see a performance of The Messiah by Handel, and at the end of the show, this gentleman named Vincent Astor, who worked at the Orpheum and who was the organist at the Orpheum, played the organ as it rose up out of the pit, and it was in a beautiful movie palace like this, and that was the first time I'd ever seen or heard anything like that, and I basically got bitten by the bug, and I've done it ever since, and I love it.
Scott performed several pieces of music that showcased the organ's range and then played accompaniment to 2 silent films, Charlie Chaplin's The Ring and Laurel and Hardy's Habeas Corpus. It was a treat to have these moving pictures brought to life with Wonder Morton music, one of the few occasions today when the organ can fulfill its original purpose.
The days of the silent films are long gone. They ended in 1929. So those of us who do it are basically perpetuating what is almost a lost art form, which makes it even more special.
The Santa Barbara Theater Organ Society hosts 4 concerts a year, but trying to find organists to play for the next generation is more of a challenge.
As the audiences get older and age and go on to that big movie palace in the sky, the audiences slim out a little bit, and if we don't have younger interests, there won't be any audiences for these, much less anyone to play them. So it's critically important not just for audiences to come listen, but for theaters to support their instruments, support their organists, and allow them to be played publicly and not just 2 or 3 times a year.
So the next time you're at the movies on a Friday or Saturday night, cross your fingers that you'll be treated to more sounds from Santa Barbara's most historic and whimsical musical instrument.
For more information, call the Santa Barbara Theater Organ Society at 685-9891. Well, that does it for this month's episode of Inside Santa Barbara and our time here from East Cabrillo Boulevard. If you have any questions or comments about the show, give us a call at City TV at 564-5311. You can also watch the show online at citytv18.com. I'm your host, Rachel Acenas, and remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.